Hi, this is Molly with Molly Q Creates and Starry Night Creations. In this video, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of this mini album. So this is created using the Uniquely Creative Flip Folio and the Christmas Wishes collection, also by Uniquely Creative. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the album to see how everything comes together. And then I'm going to go a little bit more in depth as to how as to the materials used and how I assembled each page. This is not going to be a walkthrough where I'm showing you how I cut everything, but I'm hoping that it's in depth enough that you can see how it's created so that you can recreate it, or you can also use these ideas as a jumping point for your mini album. So to get started, this album, I used ribbon to tie it, and on the back it has this floral. And then when you open it up, you have the inside panel can hold a 3x4 photo. And again, on the first page, you can do a 3x4 photo. And now, one thing to keep in mind is this page, you can see part of it when the album is closed. So therefore, I did not use a full-size 4x6 photo, just use a 3x4, and then this floral creative cut acts as an embellishment for both when it's closed and on the page. So this is a trifold album. Here I turned this into a pocket. It is a flap. I turned it into a pocket, and then I used the trifold album in the pocket. So this trifold album, so you open it up, and then you can open up one more time. And then the back. And then I just did a single tie. I didn't want to have a lot of ribbon, so I just did a shorter tie on that one. And I did glue these two sides down so it is a pocket. And then for the middle, we have this flap and this flap, and they both open. Now, one thing I want to point out, when you create a mini album, either whether it's this one or any type of mini album that has a lot of moving parts and flaps, you want to make sure that as you design the page, you know what it's going over. So for instance, on this album is designed to go like this with this on top. However, I really liked the Santa element and the Merry Christmas down here. So now if I fold it like this looks odd when you're just opening it up because you're seeing Santa's legs. Therefore, I chose to close it this way. So now this kind of looks like a pocket for this, but the nutcracker and the photo all seem like in line, and here you just have like a bottom border. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're creating any type of mini album that has a bunch of flips and folds. Make sure that the elements you put on one side when everything's closed together makes sense. Okay, so when I open it up on the bottom flap, I can do a small square photo, and then I have a couple embellishments. In the middle, the main part of it, I have a 4x6 photo along with some embellishments. Some are on the paper, and then I did add some creative cuts. And now this top section is kind of fun. Now this piece is actually a separate mini album that comes with the folio. And originally I was going to just tuck it into the pocket so you'd have two things to pull out, but I kind of like it here as like it creates a pocket. Plus this is small, so it really didn't work well for big photos, but you can open it up. So now you have a place that you can journal. So you can do like some hidden journaling about, Christmas or your Christmas memories. You can also put some small pictures on here. And then I turn this into a pocket by only adhering basically along these sides. So now these pieces pull out. So these are some of the 3x4 cards. So I did two of those. And on the inside, you can add a photo, you can just do journaling, and then you can tuck them in there. And then I did add a 3x4 card. Again, you can cut more cardstock to use as photo mats. And then I tuck them in there. And now another thing too about the way that this folds is that these, when they're in here, they'll be upside down. And so that way, with this flap coming up, if they fall out, they'll be caught. However, this is in here pretty tight, so I'm not really concerned about these really moving, but that is another consideration, is when you have pieces that pull out, to make sure that they're not going to fall out of the album. And so that way, by folding this one down first and then this, now you have a catch for it. So there you have a quick walkthrough of the album. Now I'm going to show you the supplies I used to create the album and just do a little bit more in-depth walkthrough of each page, so that if you wanted to recreate this album or something similar, you can pause and stop the video as you're working along. Okay, so to create this is the Uniquely Creative Flip Folio. They come in both craft and white. And so this is how it comes out of the package. You get the folio, and then you get the two, well, it's a 3-piece set. So then you get the 2 smaller ones, the medium-sized trifold, and then this little envelope one. And now to make this even easier to create, there's a coordinating die set. Now this is a large die set. It's actually really fun. And of course, you only have to buy the die set once, and you can use it with all of the, to create many mini albums with this flip folio set. So there is a die for each piece, and on the dies, you can see there's a stitching mark. So it creates this fun stitching border along each of the pieces that it cuts out. So you just match up the dies. There's the rectangle one. The one I want to point out is, like, here's the scallop one, goes on the inside and inside cover, and of course the outside cover. Now there are 3 scalloped ones. 2 of them are almost exactly the same size. So the smallest one coordinates with this mini trifold. So you can do 6 panels. But now the one I was going to show you is that you have these 2 that are exactly the same, except for one is slightly longer. So the one that's slightly longer, you might assume would go with this album, but it is too long. This one that's slightly longer actually goes with this mini. And then you would cut out 1 piece for all 3 panels on here. So one thing I would caution against, though, is I did use this as 1 piece on both the front and the back. However, I had a problem with the folds. So you can see here in the video where this is kind of crinkling here at the fold. Down here, this one's pretty good. The ones on the back, still I had some problems with. When it's flat, it kind of wrinkles up. When it's down, then it's flat. So what I would do on my next mini album would be to cut the piece. So I would cut this piece and then cut the paper. So now I have 3 pieces to put on here. So I'm not cutting this panel, but I would cut 1 piece with the die and then cut it into 3 pieces so that it fits on here in 3 pieces and you're not covering the folds. Okay, so that is that. And then of course you have the shorter one, fits on the panel. And then you have a small one with scallops for that flip up. And then you also have this rectangle that has 2 rounded corners. Now these dies are a big die set, and they are really fun to play around with. They work great, obviously, for the folios, which they are created for. The other thing they work really well for is scrapbook layouts, because you have these nice big die cut pieces of paper, then you can use them as matting for your photos. So It's a very delicate type looking collection, very beautiful, and it has the old world Santa, so it's very vintagey. And this sheet in here that has the sample on the back side of it is some cutout, so you can definitely use that without, so don't throw that part away. Then I also use the creative cuts that coordinate with the line. You have Santas, you have presents, you have a little girl, you have the nutcracker, the ornaments, little candy cane, and now on each of these, there's a pink bow and an ornament, and I glued the pink bow on top of the ornament. So I love layering embellishments, and that one just seemed to go together, and that pink bow just kind of finished off the end of the top of the ornament. I also used the mini cut apart sheet. Now the mini cut apart sheets come with 4 sections on an 8.5 by 11 paper. All 4 sections are exactly the same. This one that goes with the Christmas Wishes collection is also great for Christmas cards. It has sentiments like warmest wishes for a joyful Christmas, season's greetings, have a holly jolly Christmas. And the nice thing about this is that you can cut it into 4s. So you wind up with a piece like this. And there's a die. This die is not part of the folio die set. This is a separate die. It's the Essentials. I believe it's the Essentials number 5. But you can see how it lines up perfectly. And then I just use some Best Ever Craft tape or whatever. If you have a low tack tape that you like to use, tape it on there. I tape it to my cutting plate, run it through my die cut machine, and then I cut all of the sentiments at once. Of course, these are just straight sentiments, so you can also use your paper trimmer. So I think one last thing that I used is the Catherine Pooler Over Coffee ink. I did ink around each of the edges on the paper, and it just helps it to blend in with the craft. With the craft base, but I also think that it just kind of warms up the paper. It helps to define the edges, but it also softens them. I also inked the white cardstock for the photo mats. Again, that helps it to blend in, and that way if you do a photo that's slightly smaller, you just see the brown edge. So I guess the other thing that you would need is to cut a piece of white cardstock, or maybe 2 pieces, cut them into 3 by 4 and then 4 by 6. A couple of them I cut down. So you need that for whatever photos you want. If you have a specific set number of photos you want to use in the album, then I suggest cutting your white cardstock to those sizes and to the number that you need, so that you know how many places you need for photos. And then to apply the Over Coffee ink, I just used a foam ink dauber or an ink foam and brushed along the edges. So when die cutting the paper, for instance, this one was used for this. I took the die that I needed, to be this one, and I just placed it over the paper. And most of them I tried to get close to the edge, but the edge of the die is the cutting blade. So you don't want the die to be over the white at all, or the bottom strip, or over the edge. But I would just get it so there's just a thin strip of the pattern showing. And then I would use the Best Ever Craft tape to tape it down. I would also cut the paper down so that it would fit through your die cut machine. And then again, that is just how I kind of cut all of these, is that I went through the papers, I would look at the cover and say, what do I want for the cover? And let's see, for the cover, do something like position it maybe like that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that these are different papers, and they do kind of flow together, and I did plan it that way. But the papers really are not meant to flow together. Like you can see here, you have green leaves, and here you have the white flowers. So they're not a continuous pattern, but it's fine because you have the edge here in the book. So people are not going to look and be like, oh, those patterns don't go together. But I just tried to create a flow. And again, some can be totally different. Like this one just has the Santa off to the side. But like I said, when I was die cutting, I just hold the die over the paper, trim the paper down so I could get through the die cut machine, and just tape the die down. Same thing with these, like, so I want to do this one as a square. Okay, so that is for the paper, and now I'm just going to set these aside. All right, so to get started with this, after I've cut out all of the papers, the first thing I did was attach the ribbon. So now for the album, I used the Barely Arts liquid glue. I used that for all of the pieces in the album. For gluing it down, I didn't have any problems with the paper wrinkling. So I do highly recommend the Barely Art liquid glue. And to get started, the first thing I did was add the ribbon. Now this ribbon is not long enough to go all the way around, so I'm just using it to show you what I did. And I just kind of took the front panel. It's easy to find the middle because you can find the center scallop. And so I had enough hanging over that I wanted for tying the bow. And then I just started gluing this down. I just put a bunch of liquid glue down and then continued it around to the back. And again, have a longer ribbon. And so that way I just made sure that both ends met. It was easier to find the middle of the front. And then I just made sure that the back one kind of came out and met it. So I glued the ribbon down first. And now my paper is on top of the ribbon. This is about a 5/8 inch wide satin ribbon. You can kind of see if you look close enough, but the background paper has a little of a texture that it kind of hides that little ridge for the ribbon. And on the back, I actually don't even see it at all. But I just wanted to make sure that the ribbon is in there. You can see it on the spine. All right, so for the cover, again, I just cut out I found an area of the pattern paper that I liked, cut it out. I used the brown ink around the edges, and then this Christmas cheer is from the piece that is on the backside of this piece. So it is included in the kit. It is a cutout. So I did that for the cover. Now the back is simply one piece of, this is a floral piece that goes diagonal across the paper. So I just cut that out, inked around the edges, and glued that to the back. So now when you open it, on the front panel, this floral is from the paper. And then I added a 3x4 photo mat, added a pale poinsettia in the upper left corner. And then in the bottom right corner, I added a ornament with, again, the pink bow glued to the top. And now one thing about gluing these down is I did not put any glue where it would be over the photo mat, so that I will be able to slide a photo in there. Or if you're giving this to somebody, that they have room to slide a photo in. And if you're giving it to somebody, you could just even like pencil in 3x4 photo. And now on the page to the right, I have two floral elements that I put down first, and then I centered the 3x4 in there on top of them. And then again, keep in mind that when this is closed, because originally I was going to do a 4x6 photo, but when this was closed, you could see the edge of the photo. So just keep in mind how it's going to look when it's folded. So now you can see the flower, and then I just added a cute little gingerbread in the bottom corner to decorate it. And again, there's no adhesive underneath the part of the gingerbread that's on the photo mat. And now I do want to point out one error that I did when I made this album. And I just want to point this out because we all make mistakes, and sometimes we think that it's the end of the world, that everybody's going to notice, and that you have to start all over. I did not start over, but what I did was I had my ink pad, had it open, and then this was sitting in there. So I realized that this top corner got really dark and inked. So I guess there are a couple ways that I could do to fix it. And one, it would be to ink around all of the edges of the album. I could have done that. I decided to just leave it. And actually, I kind of forget about it. And like I said, it's just brown. It's kind of gives it more of a worn look. So when mistakes happen, don't panic. You can just keep going on. Or like I said, another option that I could have done was to just ink around the craft as well. All right. So now when I open it up, let's talk about the middle section first, or next. I have this bottom panel. So I added Santa. I popped up the Merry Christmas. So this has some foam tape behind it. And then the little girl, I glued behind the present. So she's kind of behind Santa peeking out. So the Santa and the girl are not one die cut. It is two, and I just layered them together. And now when you flip this down, I have the girl again. I have a photo. I'm going to measure this. Probably could have gotten a smaller ruler for this. But it's 2 3/4 inch square. So this is just a small 2 3/4 inch square. And then again, this Deck the Halls is on the back side of the front paper in the paper pack. And then did it kind of covering the presents, and again, just kind of overlap the photo a bit. So that's the flap. And then another thing to notice, when I cut this background piece, you can see here that there is a little bit of an ornament coming down. And at first I was going to use the back side, and I decided to just go with it because you have this pattern that just kind of looks like it's extending down there. All right, so now for the top flap, I have a 4x4. I'm just going to double check that. Yep, a 4x4 square. So I took my 6x4 and just trimmed it down to a square. I have all of the pattern paper behind it, but then I added the nutcracker and then the season's greetings. And when I'm designing this, I kind of like hold it open to see what is everybody going to be seeing at this point. Okay, so then again, underneath the season's greetings and the side of the nutcracker, there's no adhesive, so you can use the photo in there. Now, when you flip this open on the top flap, again, I added paper to the smallest folio. And then on the front, I took one of the blocks, the Wishing You Joy and Peace, and I just did a little fantail or fishtail at the end and glued that down. When you open it up, I did not do anything in here. You could put like a paper or maybe even one with like some lines to indicate journaling. You could add, but I figure this is just something that maybe I'll just do a note. Maybe I'll do some smaller pictures. So I just left that one blank. Then again, while it was open, I just put adhesive on just the edges so that then I could tuck in these cards. So I have one 3x4 card that I just inked around the edges. You could add more. And then I have 2 of these that are from the 3x4 sheet. Cut them out. I just kept them together, folded them to create a booklet. I did corner around the edges and inked around it. And then these have white between them, but I just inked it, and you really can't tell that there's white. I trimmed off all the white around the edges except for in the middle. You could also do a booklet, maybe a 4x6 booklet from white, and then just glue these on the front of it, or front and back. Then in the middle, you have space for photos and for writing. Same thing with this one. It's just one piece, 2 3x4 pieces folded together. And again, did the inking and the corner rounding. And now for the centerpiece, this is a 4x6 photo mat. This floral and the ornament is from the paper, but this floral up here is one of the creative cuts. And so I did that behind. Then again, I added an ornament with a pink bow and the nutcracker down here. And I just did that to kind of like offset it. And I kind of like the flow that this has. It's kind of like this, your eye just kind of goes throughout the page. All right, and then for the last section, I added a creative cut, and I just kind of popped it. It's a big floral piece, and I did put it kind of halfway over the edge, and I just kind of like the way that flowed, and it just kind of points towards Santa. And then I took the Wishing You Joy, and I popped it up. I trimmed it down so it was shorter, and I used foam tape to pop that up in the center. And then for my trifold mini album, the medium-sized one, I didn't do anything else to the front. I could add like a date or like the year, or maybe even like, family Christmas or some type of title up here, but I just decided to leave that blank for now. The back, again, I left it blank. You could certainly put a 3x4 for a photo here. I just like the tree, and I just like to leave some things just to showcase the paper. So when you open it up, and I'm going to just slide that one out. So when you open it up, you have the pattern paper, and then I just did a 3x4 photo mat, and then the presents in the bottom right corner. And then on the right side, it says Christmas wishes, and again, a 3x4 photo mat, and then I did a black strip down at the bottom, sending love this Christmas. Open it up, so now it's a trifold. And again, you have, this is the page we talked about. In the middle, you have, I think this is, you could do this as a 4x4. This is actually 4 1/4 wide. And I did trim it a little bit shorter, so it's about 3 3/4. But you could keep it at like 4 1/4 by 4, or even a 4x4. And now I just have the flower spray at the top. Again, nothing, no adhesive there, so you can slide a photo in. And Merry Christmas. And again, only putting adhesive on the bottom and leaving this without adhesive. And then on the right page, you could do a 3x4, but you're going to cover up Santa, and I really like the Santa, so I just did the black strip and I cut it in half. May your Christmas be merry and bright. And then I added another ornament with a bow. If you wanted to use this for journaling, or like more of like a title or something, you might want to leave that off. But I just kind of liked how it finished it off, and it just kind of is like a resting point for you have, your photos, and then you just have like this little resting point, a little message. You can fold it up, you have another photos, you have your little photo book. And then this one, again, I did put the ribbon on first. There's quite a bit going on the paper, even though it's very subtle. So I don't really notice the ribbon edge, which I was afraid I would. And I just did a single knot on that one. So there you have the album. Oh, and I did glue this flap. This flap is loose. I just did liquid glue on the two sides, and I held it down, and I did have it, I glued it while this piece was in there. There, now I have my ribbon out. Okay, so I put this piece in there, and then I put glue on the sides and held it down. And then I just kind of made sure that I'd move this to make sure the medium folio, to make sure I wasn't gluing everything together. Just press these down. If you have something like some clothespins or something, you could use those to keep it closed, but I did hold it down for a good minute or so to make sure that it was dry. I do like the liquid glue because it does have a very strong permanent bond. So that is the walkthrough for the Christmas Wishes mini album. And then just to tie it, and then straighten up my bow. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot of ideas for how you can use the Uniquely Creative Folios to create mini albums for yourself. Thank you for watching.